Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. Now, India has confirmed United States assertion that a person identified as CC1 in a US Department of Justice indictment of an alleged murder plot of Khalistani terrorist Gurpatwant Singh Pannu is no longer employed by the Indian government. The US State Department has stated that it had been informed about this by Indian officials who are members of an inquiry committee. They have further gone on to express their satisfaction with India's cooperation in the investigation. Now, the US has also formally charged CC1, identified as Vikas Yadav, with murder for hire and money laundering. A statement from the US Attorney's Office in New York's Southern District has been followed up by a federal arrest warrant. The Justice Department report mentions that Vikas Yadav recruited Nikhil Gupta to orchestrate the murder. According to America, at Vikas Yadav's direction, Nikhil Gupta contacted an individual whom Gupta believed to be a criminal associate but was actually a confidential source working with the DEA. The US claims that the confidential source introduced Gupta to a purported hitman who was in fact a DEA undercover. The document highlights that the dealings brokered by Gupta, Yadav agreed to pay the undercover officer $100,000 to murder the victim and $15,000 in cash was given as an advance payment for the murder. Now, amidst all these revelations and statements that have been put forth by America and responded by India, let's start this conversation. I have with me Major General Sanjay Meston, and let's hear it from you, Major General Meston, about what are going to be the implications of these revelations and remarks that have come from the US Justice Department, who has now gone on to release the picture and the name of the individual that has been docked by India after the evidence, as US says, has been provided to the government.
Sorry, I just missed your last sentence, please.
What are the implications of this development that has taken place? In the last 12 hours, US has released the name of the individual that it gave evidence of to India, who was allegedly involved in the plotted assassination of Gurpatwant Singh Pannu.
The implications are very clear. Firstly, the two names which have been released, and of course the CC1 is Vikas Yadav. And more than that, the second line of the statement is very, very important, that India has been cooperating extremely well, and the person is also no longer part of the government setup or is an employee of the government of India. So these two statements I feel are very positive. Firstly, it reflects the government of India's cooperation with the US intelligence agencies and of course their Justice Department and whatsoever. And number two, it also highlights that if there was a person, he definitely, as on date, he is not a government employee. So these two things are very clear. So I think these statements are reflecting that there has been some good understanding between United States and India on this aspect, and we are not playing the blame game, unlike what the Canadian Prime Minister had played the blame game. See, he has started blaming Indian agencies and the Indian High Commissioner based there and his team of officials. So this is showing a total different attitude between two nations. One is Canada and one is the United States. So I think the United States is not trying to discredit India, and it is highly stated that Indian agencies and India is cooperating very well in all the investigations. So this is a very fine implication. And the next point is, I think the US maturity also reflects, they are also part of the Five Eyes, and so is Canada. Now, Five Eyes, what the Prime Minister Trudeau had stated yesterday during his, testimony. See, he just said we don't have specific evidence, but we have intelligence. I think it is the most biggest remark by any head of the state. Whereas, the next point is, by making such silly statements, head of a nation, he has also undermined the credibility of 5S, and I'm sure the other four nations of the 5S would not take this statement in a correct stance because it's clearly reflecting, because Prime Minister Trudeau has been mentioning repeatedly that he shared all this, and this all has been shared with the 5S members.
Right.
So this again shows that firstly he not shared anything. He had no hard
Okay.
evidence.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, fair enough, fair enough. I also have with me Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor, and Ambassador Kapoor, in wake of these developments, and Major General Meston also mentioned them, that there is perhaps a message that goes out from the American side when it says that India is cooperating, and parallelly when it raises concerns that why is it there is lack of cooperation between India and Canada after these intelligence reports were shared by Prime Minister Trudeau to India. Now this contrast, how must India perceive this, and how must Canada perceive this?
Thank you very much, Megha. It is actually, you're right, it's a study in contrast. The Canadian side is behaving in a very immature fashion. And fortunately, the US is not following the same track. Now, for Canada to go to the media and, put statements out there which are not substantiated by fact or evidence is very, very sad for one side. Unfortunate for them to do that and not realizing that what is the big picture between India and Canada. I mean, some Canadian-based terrorists, and we should not even call them Khalistani, they are just pure and simple Canadian-based terrorists and US-based terrorists, and some of them are jointly based in Canada and US, like Panun, but they are straight and simple terrorists. So India has to very firmly build up the narrative that they are hardcore terrorists, and once that is conveyed to the common people in both these countries, that their governments are sheltering and aiding and abetting hardcore terrorists who are indulging in acts of terrorism and in violence and in threats and in murders and in assassinations,
Right.
and in disrupting the Indian democracy. So that is firstly the effect which has to be taken in terms of not just talking about them as Khalistanis or activists, because that is a Western narrative. Our narrative has to be very clear that they are just a second aspect is the US understands what is the big picture, how what is the relevance of India to US, how are the future of India-US relations going to impact the world, how they're going to impact the US, how they're going to impact India. So Canada has also to realize that.
Okay.
So that sort of discussion has to take place, that what is the big picture. Now you cannot
Right.
let relations suffer for the cause of issues which are very important to India, and for them to give succor and support and shelter to these terrorists is incorrect. So that message has to go to the common people of Canada and the common people of USA, that this is something that India very strongly objects to, and that will be appreciated a lot, and that will automatically put a lot of pressure on the governments in both these countries to sort of behave themselves on this aspect, because they have a very strong policy on terrorism, and they go out and kill terrorists who are acting against US interests anywhere in the world or Canadian interests anywhere in the world. So once they understand that this is what we are dealing with, and this is going to backfire on their countries,
Okay.
then it becomes a little easier to have a dialogue. Thank you.
Okay, okay, all right. Joyita, then a concern also is raised in our minds, that is India also trying to salvage its relationship with the United States of America, who looks upon itself as the big brother. There are no two ways about it that America continues to be the biggest world power. It's the only superpower that at this point of time in the world has a certain amount of influence in global affairs.
Well, is there any evidence that India-US relations have hit rock bottom? I don't think so. I mean, when you are looking at, while this is continuing, that if you are looking at it, even at the US administration, of course, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor will know much more on this than any of us can even aspire to. But the fact is that the US government, US administration works in silos. So, while our relationship with the State Department in particular, and this attack is coming from State and Justice, where the Justice Department also it's a very partisan man with political ambitions. So, a lot of it also has to concern their own politics. So, you see, when our relations seem to have taken a nosedive in with the State Department, with the Justice Department, our relationship is doing fine with the US Defense Department. So, there is, or for example, at the level of the NSAs, at the level of the leadership of the country and all. So, I do not think we can just say that India US relationship has taken a nosedive and India is compromising because of that. No, India is just following the rule of law in terms of if a serious complaint has been made, if the US has made placed certain things in front of India, India will look into it. What has Canada done? If you contrast it with India's response to Canada, what has Canada done in this? Canada has just said that we have credible proof, we have not proof, they are talking about credible allegations. Even I think last week also, or even earlier this week also, Justin Trudeau said that he does not have any proof. He has intelligence, he does not have any proof. I think so obviously when it comes to, and then he goes on and names our High Commissioner without a shred of proof. He is going on to name our High Commissioner as a person of interest. I mean, as far as we are concerned, that is extremely uncivilized, undiplomatic, I would say bordering on criminal behavior. So, there is a reason why India is responding to Canada differently and India is responding to the US differently.
Okay. Okay. Adit Kothari, now while India has done its bit, there is also a huge issue when there have been extradition requests that have been sent out by us to America and demanded United States of America to proscribe Gurpatwant Singh Pannu as a terrorist. There has been enough evidence that has been provided to America to then consider and treat Gurpatwant Singh Pannu as a terrorist. But so far there has not been any action that has been taken by America, something similar that has been witnessed in Canada as well. How do we ensure that there is then cooperation from these countries and particularly America over the issue of the Khalistani extremism and Pannu?
So when it comes down to how do we actually make sure that America is being able to understand our side of things, I think that's where people like yourself come in. I think media, especially the Indian media, needs to cry out and they need to expose the Western hypocrisy that your terrorist is my terrorist, but my terrorist incidentally is your asylum seeker, your citizen, or you're an individual who's claiming human rights persecution elsewhere. So that duplicity, that double standards needs to be called out. The Modi administration has tried to accommodate the US administration, the Biden administration. They've gone out of their way to ensure that we can work together as strategic allies, as strategic partners. But at the end of the day, this is all a ploy by the Biden administration, or as a lot of people may call them as the American deep state, to think that the Canadians are acting on their own and are acting in complete dehyphenation to the United States. I think we'll be extremely misleading ourselves. We'll be very dishonest with ourselves if we think that is purely the case, because that cannot be. If we look at the dotted events, the G20, we need to go back to as far as May 2023. This particular Gupta and Yadav case has been in the domain since May 2023. But why did it only come into the public domain just after the G20 summit? And especially just after when Trudeau was meant to be in Parliament speaking about foreign interferences by the Chinese, he deflects that entire ball game and drops this bombshell, calling India out and the Indian agents as persons of interest now. So all of these points towards that the Biden administration and the Trudeau administration are working in collusion. The only difference is that the Biden administration is much more sophisticated with their diatribes against India, whereas Trudeau is extremely moronic and stupid with his with the way he's basically conducted himself.
Okay. Major General Meston, again the same question. How must India conduct itself with the Five Eyes nations? Now, when it comes to our bilateral ties and trade ties with Australia, they are harmonious. We've signed free trade agreements. Prime ministers after prime ministers, whether it is Albanese or before that Morrison, we have had really strong relations with the country, and something similar that we see with United Kingdom and with America, or for that matter, New Zealand, which is perhaps not so much a country which has as much power as the others, versus the Canada issue that has now been raked up. Does this then hamper our bilateral relations with the rest of the Five Eyes nations?
Very pertinent question asked, Megha. Firstly, what India can do with the Five Eye countries. I have a feeling that today, after 9/11, the United States realized the importance and value of India, because we had been battling global terrorism, and we had the greatest knowledge about terrorism. And that is the time United States never ever supported us. But when 9/11 happened, things changed, and then they realized the value of India. And today we have great understanding with the United States on including intelligence sharing. Not only that, today we are strategic partners with the United States. So that's another aspect. Thirdly is, whatever it is, since Australia is also part of the Five Eyes and of course New Zealand, I foresee a situation, since we are now part of Quad, I think perhaps in the near future, Five Eyes may get little enlarged. I think there is already a talk of taking Japan in, which again happens to be a member of Quad, and considering it's not only intelligence sharing of terrorism, it is intelligence sharing of all aspects. It's an intelligence alliance. So I think in the near future, Five Eyes is likely to get enlarged. Japan is in the offing. And perhaps since we are also part of Quad and Indo-Pacific is another flashpoint, I perhaps foresee that in near future, India may also be given the invitation to be part of the Five Eyes, which will be good for us. See, after all, and you asked another pertinent question, the extradition. I personally feel, yes, that is a very, very important thing. But extradition, I think India needs to give absolutely hard evidence, hard intelligence on Pannu, everything with crystal clear details. One is generic, he is indulging in anti-Indian activities and he is a, Sikh the protagonist for the Khalistan state or whatever it is. Hard intelligence of terrorist and terrorist activities, I think that will work. After all, we have extradition treaties with many of the countries.
Okay.
And with them hard intelligence, so things happen.
Okay,
so
all right, fair enough, sir. Ambassador Kapoor, now talking about enhancement of Five Eyes and expansion of it, and India being included in it, do you think this is a long shot, keeping in mind this grouping? The likes of G7 were created by the whites, for the whites, and of the whites, and there you have it, countries like India and other global South nations being, second-class citizens, and therefore a very strong and pertinent statement that did come from our External Affairs Minister as well. Since you would not allow us to be part of the groupings, we then decide to build our own associations, own groupings for the welfare, for the development and strategic partnerships with the global South nations. In a similar vein, as Adit said that, there was a statement, a strong one said that, while your terrorist is our terrorist, somehow when we talk about terror organizations that are operating and attacking India's sovereignty, somehow don't feature in your agenda when they seem to seek asylum in your countries, and you very readily offer them so.
Thank you, Megha. I think those are very important points. First, let me discuss about the Five Eyes. Currently, it is going to be not an easy proposition for India to become a member of the Five Eyes. It also depends on what you bring to the table. Now, since we are, increasing our presence, our impact, our strengths, our economic, strengths also globally, becoming the primary driver of the global economy. Now, as this becomes more and more firmly entrenched in the minds of the Western world, then they will seek you out to ask you to become a member of the Five Eyes. But it's some time off, not going to happen in the immediate future. And secondly, basically, you have to also continue on the path of your autonomy, of your strategic interest, and develop your groupings and associations and keep on increasing your strength. So once Japan is taken in, if at all it happens in the next year or two, then the possibilities of India being considered thereafter come up. But in the meantime, there are also the questions of UN membership of the, Indian membership of the UN Security Council and various other fora, world fora.
Yeah, but we keep harping upon that point, sir. But I've spoke to the former National Security Advisor under the Trump Organization and Mr. Bolton, and he goes about saying that this would never be a reality. Expansion of the permanent 5 nations of the United Nations Security Council is just a pipe dream.
Yeah, no, in the sense that some of the countries which are there currently do not deserve to be there, and some of the countries which are not permanent members deserve to be permanent members, and that goes without saying. So either it has to be enlargement or change of membership. Now, for the aspect of US operating in different silos, that is correct. There are a large number of people in the State Department and in other agencies here like the Justice Department, which are not working towards enlarging or enhancing India-US relations in a significant way, whereas there are other departments like Defense Department and the health services and the other departments of drugs, etc., which are very keen on enlarging the footprint of India-US relations and making India more and more important partner. The think tanks here are very clear that for the future of US, India is a very important country and it needs to be properly sort of treated also and brought on board so that there is very good cooperation. Now, it is also going to be impacted a lot by who wins the elections which are going to be held next month, because if the Republicans come into power, then the chances of India-US strategic relations being further enhanced and the State Department also working wholeheartedly towards that objective rather than giving money for human rights analysis in India. And it's a joke, the things that they do, allotting millions of dollars to disrupt India-US relations, have conferences in India which are against democracy of India. So those sort of things will be curtailed very significantly, and our relations will move forward much faster. If a democratic administration comes in, the relations will still be very good, but some of these departments will continue to disrupt the overall pace of our relations, the impact of India-US on the global stage, and they'll keep on sort of, bringing it down, making it slower, and not making it come to fruition at a faster clip, which is required for India, for US, and for the world.
Right.
Because the breaking US forces and the breaking India forces are currently, there's a lot of overlap between these two forces.
Okay.
And only if we work jointly with all the departments working simultaneously together in the larger interest of India and US and the world, then they will come under control. Otherwise, it'll be very difficult to bring them under control. Thank you, Megha.
Okay. Jyothap, then how do we move ahead with this? This is a complicated association between the Five Eyes nations and particularly United States of America and on the other hand Canada, where we are not looking to relent. How do we manage this tricky situation?
Well, first of all, there is no Five Eyes, there is the US, there is the US is all 5. Okay, all the other 5, the 4 eyes are irrelevant. So, we have to only look at the US and no one else, number 1. Number two, when we are looking about bilateral relations, again I am going to say, what is this tricky? I mean, for God's sake, our standing on the world stage is not dependent on, it does not depend on those twopenny threats that are used by, you know, that sock puppet known as Justin Trudeau and his foreign minister Melanie Joly or whatever that is. India has its own right. India stands on its own right. India in terms of PPP is the third largest economy in the world. India in terms of GDP, it's on its way to become, I think, the third. I mean, sooner or later, fifth and third, whatever the thing is. So, have some faith in ourselves. When the US is asking for things like this, the first thing you have to ask them is that, okay, fine, what about the extradition of David Headley? You know, in the 2611 case. So, the minute you are asking for the extradition of Vikas Yadav, we can always ask about the David Headley. Let us have a quid pro quo deal, number one. Number two, why are they so keen to protect up Khalistani like Gurpatwant Singh Pannu? We have the case, all the everybody knows about it, even the US knows about it. Why is Gurpatwant Singh Pannu being protected? Is he a CIA asset? Is that the reason why they are becoming so jumpy about this particular man? It's a fact, you know, Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, in terms of, you know, if you are looking at the terrorist rankings or whatever, I mean, he is not our priority, he is not there up on top, he is one of the lower rung leaders, he talks a lot, of course, he has done bad things, he has indulged in acts of terrorism, but of more interest is that why is the US protecting him? What exactly is the US game here? So, you see, when you have to face them, fine, come across as transparent, tell them what, but of course, you also have certain conditions.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So,
don't forget that.
Yes, this has been the demand that has been often repeated, but unfortunately we've still not been able to garner the cooperation of America as we would have liked it. Aditya, again, your response to this, particularly in this, you know, a largely skewed relationship when it comes to strategic affairs between India and America, and skewed in favor of America.
I think the Americans are playing this.
Aditya.
The Americans are playing this very strategically. So what they're using is they are using the Canadians to, they're basically hiding behind the Canadians and taking pot shots. So the way Indians should play this also is go very hard at the Canadians, go very hard at somebody as intellectually dishonest and bankrupt as Justin Trudeau. But at the same time, because the Americans are playing, from their side of things, on the Pannu case, they're playing it very meticulously. There are charge sheets, there are indictments. So India should basically, respond to them diplomatically. They should cooperate on all of those levels. But we all know the extraditions from both sides are never going to happen. Neither is Mr. Yadav, if he does exist, is he going to be ever extradited from here to there, or neither is David Headley ever going to be extradited from the United States. One thing that I did want to point out, the FBA wanted photograph of Mr. Vikas Yadav that's been put out. He's been shown in an Indian army uniform. So maybe the general can come in here. Is it possible that the CRPF at any point of time, even if they're commandos, can they ever wear an Indian army uniform? So, that's a pertinent question that we should all be asking. So could this be a mistaken identity, or do the FBI have the wrong person, basically?
Okay, I don't know. This is a controversial question right there, because India at this point in time has conceded that this individual, the CCI, the figure that has been given to this individual and has now been identified as Vikas Yadav, has in fact been removed from service from the government of India. So again, a question mark on that. And what is the conversation that has happened between India and America will never be divulged and come out on public forum. On that note, I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast, and thanks for watching NewsX.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.